Let's be honest, feeling ignored by someone you care about cuts deep. It stings in a way that's hard to explain, doesn't it? I've been there. Those moments where their silence feels louder than any words they could have spoken. You find yourself overthinking, replaying every interaction, questioning your worth, and maybe even wondering, what's wrong with me? But let me tell you something. Nothing is wrong with you. The problem isn't your value, it's how you're viewing the situation. I know this because I used to handle these moments all wrong. I'd overanalyze, try harder, say more, and chase the connection that felt like it was slipping through my fingers. But the harder I tried, the further away they seemed. It wasn't until I shifted my entire approach, grounded myself in calm, built my self-worth from the inside, and learned to master patience, that everything changed. And it can change for you too. Here's the truth most people won't tell you. You don't win someone's attention by chasing after them. You can't beg for respect, force connection, or demand someone's care. Those things aren't earned through noise. They're drawn in by quiet strength. There's a power in holding yourself steady, in walking through the storm of someone's indifference without letting it break you. That power, it's rooted in how you show up for yourself, not for them. You see, when we tie our worth to how someone else treats us, we hand over control of our happiness. I've done that before, and it's exhausting. You end up feeling small, powerless, and trapped in a cycle of trying to fix something that's out of your hands. But what I learned, and what Stoic wisdom teaches, is that the only person who can truly validate you is you. When you break free from needing their attention, you reclaim your power. It's not about playing games or trying to make them jealous. This isn't about manipulation. It's about liberation. When you stop fixating on someone else and start pouring your energy into building a stronger, more grounded version of yourself, something incredible happens. The same people who once ignored you begin to notice. And those who don't. They fade into the background where they belong. This isn't just theory, it's something I've experienced firsthand. I've walked the road of overthinking, self-doubt, and frustration. I know what it's like to want someone to notice you so badly it consumes your thoughts. But I also know the freedom that comes when you let go of that need and start focusing on what truly matters: your own growth, your own peace, and your own sense of self-worth. Here's the best part. When you embrace this approach, you'll find that attracting someone's attention becomes a natural byproduct of the work you're doing on yourself. You're no longer chasing them. You're drawing them in without even trying. It's not magic. It's mastery of your emotions, your energy, and your priorities. Let me show you how. Let me ask you something. What does it feel like to constantly crave someone's attention only to be met with silence? That pit in your stomach, the lingering doubt, the nagging thought that maybe if you just tried a little harder, things would change. I've been there. I've felt the frustration, the loneliness, and even the shame that comes from chasing after someone who seems indifferent. But here's the truth I had to learn the hard way. The more you seek someone else's validation, the further away they drift. Validation isn't something you can beg for or chase down. It's something you cultivate within yourself. When I started to grasp this, everything shifted. I stopped placing my happiness in the hands of others, and the peace that followed was transformative. You might be wondering, how can I get there? How can I break free from this need for someone else to validate me? That's what I want to share with you. Emotional independence starts with understanding one powerful truth. Your value doesn't come from the outside. It comes from how you see yourself. For the longest time, I thought if I could just prove myself to others, whether through kindness, effort, or persistence, they'd finally see my worth. But that's not how it works. When your self-worth depends on someone else's attention, you're handing over control of your emotions to them. That's not power. It's a recipe for heartbreak. I learned to shift my focus inward. Instead of looking for validation from others, I began to seek it from within. It wasn't easy at first. There were moments of doubt and temptation to slip back into old habits, but each time I caught myself, I reminded myself of a Stoic principle that became my anchor. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Think about that. You can't control what others do or how they respond, but you have full control over how you think and feel about yourself. This mindset is a game changer. It's about recognizing that your value doesn't diminish just because someone else fails to see it. I started to focus on the things I could control, how I spent my time, how I cared for myself, and how I nurtured my own passions. Slowly but surely, I stopped fixating on others' responses and started prioritizing my own growth. And something interesting happened. People began noticing. Not because I was trying to get their attention, but because I had become a person whose energy naturally drew others in. One of the most liberating things I learned was to embrace solitude. Solitude isn't loneliness, it's power. It's in those quiet moments when you're alone with your thoughts that you get to know yourself on a deeper level. I stopped fearing the silence and started using it as a space to reflect, grow, and recharge. When you're emotionally independent, you're not afraid to stand alone because you know you're enough. That kind of strength is magnetic. Another lesson that changed my life was letting go of the need for constant reassurance. I used to feel like I needed others to confirm I was doing okay, to tell me I was good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough. But over time, I realized that needing constant reassurance is like trying to fill a bottomless cup. No matter how much you pour in, it's never enough. So, I decided to step away from seeking external validation and started validating myself. I asked myself tough questions. What do I believe about myself? What am I proud of? What do I want to improve? Answering those questions gave me clarity and confidence. A huge part of emotional independence is also about setting boundaries, not just with others, but with yourself. I used to let my mind run wild with thoughts about what others might be thinking or feeling, but then I realized I was spending so much energy on things I couldn't control. So, I set a boundary with myself. No overthinking about things I couldn't change. Instead, I redirected that energy toward things that mattered, my goals, my passions, and my peace of mind. Stoicism teaches us that focusing on what's within our control is the key to a content life. I started practicing this every day. For instance, instead of overanalyzing why someone hadn't texted back, I asked myself, what can I do right now that will bring me peace or joy? Sometimes it was as simple as going for a walk, reading a book, or journaling my thoughts. Other times it meant tackling a project or diving into a new hobby. The more I focused on my own life, the less their indifference mattered. Through this process, I discovered something profound. When you stop chasing people, you start attracting them. It's not about playing hard to get, it's about truly being at peace with yourself, so much so that whether someone gives you their attention or not, you remain steady. That steadiness is rare, and people are naturally drawn to it. Another thing that helped me was embracing the idea of impermanence. Stoicism teaches us that everything is temporary, our emotions, our situations, and yes, even the indifference of others. When you realize that their current behavior isn't permanent, it becomes easier to detach. You stop clinging to the need for things to be different and instead focus on living fully in the present moment. As I continued to practice emotional independence, I found myself becoming more confident, more grounded, and less reactive. I no longer felt the urge to explain myself, prove myself, or force connections. Instead, I focused on building a life that felt fulfilling to me. And you know what? That energy is irresistible. When you're truly at peace with yourself, others can't help but notice. This isn't about pretending not to care. It's about genuinely caring more about your own peace than someone else's approval. It's about knowing that your worth isn't up for debate, no matter how someone else treats you. When you embody that kind of confidence, you become a person people are naturally drawn to, not because you need them, but because you've learned to thrive without them. When you stop seeking validation and begin to anchor your sense of worth internally, a profound shift takes place. You start to feel lighter, freer, and less burdened by the weight of someone else's approval. But here's where it gets interesting. What you don't do can often have a far greater impact than what you do. That's what I want to dive into now. The strength of silent confidence is something most people overlook because, let's face it, silence isn't flashy. It doesn't scream for attention, and yet it carries a power that speaks louder than words ever could. I've seen it in my own life. The times when I was loudest, trying to prove myself, trying to explain or justify my actions, were the times I felt the weakest. But the moments when I chose composure, when I allowed my actions to reflect my value without needing to explain myself, were the times I truly stood out. Silence, when rooted in confidence, is magnetic. One of the reasons silence is so powerful is because it's unexpected. People are used to noise, words, explanations, excuses, and constant communication. When someone is silent, it forces others to stop and take notice. It creates an aura of mystery, and whether they admit it or not, people are naturally drawn to what they don't fully understand. It's not about playing games or withholding information to manipulate. It's about having the strength to let your presence speak for itself. In moments of tension or when you feel ignored, silence can be your greatest ally. I used to think I needed to respond immediately to every slight or indifference, but what I learned is that silence often speaks volumes. It shows restraint, self-control, and a level of confidence that doesn't require validation. When you don't react emotionally, you give the other person space to reflect on their behavior. They start to notice the calm strength in your demeanor and, often without realizing it, begin to respect it. Another layer to this is the power of actions. Silence doesn't mean inaction. It means letting what you do carry the message. I remember a time when I felt compelled to explain myself repeatedly in a professional setting. I was convinced that if I didn't speak up, people would overlook my contributions. But when I stepped back and let my work speak for itself, the results were undeniable. My silence wasn't passivity, it was trust in the value I was creating. That trust became evident to others without me needing to say a word. Stoicism teaches us the value of composure. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of staying steady and unshaken, even in the face of challenges. That steadiness is the foundation of silent confidence. When you're calm and composed, people notice. It's a rare quality in a world where everyone is quick to react, quick to defend, and quick to speak. Silent confidence stands out because it shows that you're secure enough in yourself not to rely on the approval of others. There's another layer to this that often gets overlooked. Silence creates space for observation. When you're not busy talking, explaining, or defending, you have the opportunity to really listen and understand the dynamics around you. You start to notice things you might have missed: body language, tone, and subtle shifts in energy. This awareness not only helps you navigate situations more effectively, but also gives you an edge in understanding others. People who are silently confident aren't just reacting to the surface. They're tuned into what's happening beneath it. The beauty of silence is that it's not confrontational. When someone ignores you, reacting with anger or frustration often reinforces their behavior. Silence, on the other hand, disarms them. It takes away the power they might have had to provoke you, and replaces it with a calm strength they can't quite figure out. That's the kind of presence that leaves an impression. In relationships, silent confidence creates a dynamic that shifts the balance of power in a healthy way. It's not about control, it's about respect. When you're confident enough to let someone's actions speak louder than their words, you show that you're not easily swayed by empty promises or fleeting attention. You're grounded, steady, and secure. That kind of energy is magnetic because it's rooted in self-respect. Silence also allows you to set boundaries without needing to explain them. I've had moments where I felt the need to justify my choices to people who didn't respect them, but when I shifted to silent confidence, the dynamic changed. Instead of over-explaining, I simply let my actions reflect my decisions. It sent a clear message. I don't need to justify myself to anyone. That kind of quiet strength speaks louder than any words could. One of the most overlooked aspects of silent confidence is the way it cultivates inner peace. When you're not constantly trying to prove yourself, you free up mental and emotional energy for things that truly matter. You start to prioritize your own growth, your own passions, and your own happiness. That peace radiates outward, and people are naturally drawn to it. It's a quiet kind of magnetism that doesn't need to shout to be noticed. I've also learned that silence isn't just about what you withhold, it's about what you choose to focus on. When you stop trying to force someone's attention and start investing in your own growth, your confidence builds naturally. It's not forced, it's a byproduct of the work you're doing on yourself. That's the kind of confidence that can't be ignored. The power of silent confidence lies in its simplicity. It's not about doing more or saying more, it's about being more present, more grounded, and more in tune with your own worth. When you embody this kind of confidence, you don't need to demand attention. It comes to you naturally. Letting your actions speak louder than your words requires patience and trust. Trust in yourself, trust in your value, and trust in the process. It's about believing that who you are and what you bring to the table is enough, without needing to prove it. That kind of belief is unshakable, and it's the foundation of a confidence that leaves a lasting impression on everyone you encounter. Silent confidence teaches us to hold our ground without being swayed by others. But there's another level of freedom that can transform how you see yourself and the people around you. It's learning to detach your worth from the actions or inactions of others. That's where the real work begins. Not in controlling their behavior, but in changing how you interpret it. Let's be honest, being ignored feels personal. It's easy to internalize it, to think it's a reflection of something you did wrong, or worse, something inherently lacking in you. I used to fall into that trap constantly, letting someone's indifference pull me into a spiral of self-doubt. But here's what I've learned. Their actions have more to do with them than with you. Reframing how you see their behavior can liberate you from unnecessary pain and give you back the emotional freedom you deserve. The first step is accepting that you don't have control over how others treat you. This might sound disheartening, but it's actually a relief. Once you let go of the need to control their actions, you free yourself from the emotional roller coaster that comes with it. I used to spend so much energy analyzing what someone's silence meant, thinking that if I could just crack the code, I'd feel better. But the truth is, their behavior wasn't about me. It was about their own struggles, insecurities, and distractions. Realizing that allowed me to stop making it about myself. This isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about understanding it so you can detach from it. Think about this. When someone ignores you, it could stem from countless things happening in their life. Stress, fear, confusion, or even their own lack of emotional capacity. Seeing it through this lens doesn't mean you accept disrespect, but it helps you stop taking it so personally. When I started doing this, I noticed an immediate shift in my peace of mind. Their actions no longer felt like a personal attack. They were simply a reflection of their own inner world. Stoicism teaches us that external events, like someone's behavior, don't have the power to disturb us unless we allow them to. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This wisdom became a cornerstone for me. Whenever I felt ignored or dismissed, I reminded myself that their behavior was outside my control, but my response to it wasn't. One thing that helped me was practicing empathy. Instead of reacting with frustration or hurt, I started asking myself, what might they be going through? This shift didn't just help me stay calm, it also softened my perspective. Empathy doesn't mean you tolerate poor treatment, but it does mean you approach situations with understanding rather than defensiveness. The more I practiced this, the less their actions affected me emotionally. Reframing ignorance also involves setting boundaries. Understanding that someone's behavior isn't about you doesn't mean you allow it to continue unchecked. Boundaries are crucial for maintaining your peace and self-respect. For me, this meant being clear about what I would and wouldn't tolerate, not out of anger, but out of self-care. When someone ignored me repeatedly, instead of chasing their attention, I chose to step back. I focused on relationships where I felt valued and let the others fall away naturally. It was a difficult shift at first, but over time, it became one of the most empowering decisions I ever made. Another thing I learned was the power of self-reflection. When someone's actions triggered me, I used it as an opportunity to explore my own emotions. Why did their behavior bother me so much? What fears or insecurities was it bringing to the surface? Asking these questions wasn't always comfortable, but it helped me grow. I realized that a lot of my frustration came from expecting others to fill emotional gaps I needed to fill myself. Once I started addressing those gaps, their actions lost their power over me. One of the most freeing realizations I had was that I don't need closure from someone else to move on. I used to think I needed an explanation or an apology to let go of the hurt caused by indifference, but I've since learned that closure comes from within. You have the power to decide when something no longer has control over you. For me, this often meant writing down my thoughts, acknowledging my feelings, and then making a conscious decision to release them. It's not about pretending the hurt didn't happen, it's about refusing to let it define you. When you stop tying your worth to someone else's actions, you start to reclaim your personal power. This isn't an overnight process, it's a daily practice. It requires constant reminders that your value isn't up for debate. You are enough, regardless of how someone else treats you. This mindset doesn't just protect your peace, it also shifts the dynamic. When you stop reacting to their indifference, they start to see you differently. You're no longer seeking their approval, and that change in energy is undeniable. I also learned to focus on what truly matters, my own growth and well-being. When someone's actions used to consume my thoughts, I now redirect that energy toward things that make me feel fulfilled. Whether it's pursuing a passion, nurturing meaningful connections, or simply taking care of myself, this shift has been life-changing. The more you invest in yourself, the less space you have for the noise of others' indifference. This approach doesn't mean you become immune to feeling hurt, but it does mean you learn to process it in a healthier way. You acknowledge the pain without letting it control you. You see their behavior for what it is, a reflection of their inner struggles, and you choose to rise above it. That choice is where your power lies. Reframing ignorance isn't about dismissing your feelings or pretending you don't care. It's about liberating yourself from the unnecessary burden of taking someone's actions personally. When you embrace this mindset, You free up space for what truly matters: your own growth, your own peace, and your own happiness. And that freedom? It's worth everything. When you stop taking someone's indifference personally and reframe it as a reflection of their inner struggles, you free yourself from so much unnecessary pain. But here's the next step, and it's a big one: stepping fully into who you are. Living authentically isn't just about being comfortable in your own skin. It's about embracing your values, standing firm in your principles, and letting that inner alignment shine outward. When you live this way, something incredible happens. You become magnetic, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because authenticity is impossible to ignore. I've seen this happen in my own life. The more I tried to adapt to fit someone else's expectations, the more invisible I felt. It's exhausting, isn't it? Bending, twisting, and pretending just to earn a shred of attention. But the truth is, when you abandon your authentic self, you lose the very thing that makes you stand out. It wasn't until I started living in alignment with who I truly was that I began to see a shift, not just in how others saw me, but in how I saw myself. Living authentically starts with understanding what you value most. For me, this meant getting brutally honest with myself. What did I believe in? What kind of person did I want to be? These weren't easy questions to answer at first, because I had spent so much time trying to mold myself into what I thought others wanted. But when I dug deep and started aligning my actions with my values, I felt an inner clarity I hadn't experienced before. Here's the thing about authenticity. It's not about perfection. It's about showing up as you are, flaws and all, and being okay with that. I used to think I needed to fix everything about myself before I could feel worthy. But Stoicism taught me that authenticity isn't about being flawless. It's about being real. When you're genuine, people feel it. They sense that you're not hiding behind a mask, and that honesty is what draws them in. One of the most liberating parts of living authentically is that you stop chasing approval. I used to be so focused on trying to make everyone like me, but the truth is, not everyone will, and that's okay. When you live in alignment with your principles, the right people will naturally gravitate toward you. And the ones who don't? They were never meant to be in your life in the first place. Learning to accept this was a turning point for me. Living authentically also means setting boundaries. When you're true to yourself, you no longer feel the need to please everyone at your own expense. I learned that saying no is one of the most powerful ways to honor who you are. At first, it felt uncomfortable, especially because I had spent so much of my life saying yes to avoid conflict. But the more I practiced it, the more I realized that boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about protecting your peace. There's a strength that comes from standing firm in your authenticity. It's not loud or showy. It's quiet, steady, and undeniable. People notice when you're grounded in who you are because it's so rare. In a world where so many are trying to fit in, being unapologetically yourself makes you stand out without even trying. I've experienced this time and time again. The more I embraced my authentic self, the more connections I formed. Not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I was simply being me. Stoicism emphasizes the importance of living in accordance with nature, and for me, that means living in alignment with my own nature, my values, beliefs, and passions. When you do this, you attract people who resonate with the real you, not the version you think they want to see. It's a deeper, more meaningful connection because it's built on truth, not pretense. Another aspect of authenticity is learning to embrace vulnerability. This was a tough one for me because I used to think being vulnerable made me weak, but I've come to see it as one of the most authentic things you can do. Sharing your struggles, admitting your mistakes, and being open about who you are takes courage. And that courage creates connection. People are drawn to honesty because it's refreshing in a world where so many hide behind facades. Living authentically also means letting go of comparison. I spent years measuring myself against others, thinking I needed to be more like them to be worthy. But the more I embraced my own path, the less I felt the need to compare. Stoicism teaches us that our focus should be on our own growth, not on trying to outdo others. When you're true to yourself, you stop seeing life as a competition and start seeing it as a journey. There's a freedom that comes with authenticity. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself or seek permission to be who you are. I used to waste so much time justifying my choices, but when I started living authentically, I realized I didn't owe anyone an explanation. That realization was empowering. It allowed me to focus on what truly mattered, living a life that felt meaningful to me. Authenticity also creates a ripple effect. When you show up as your true self, it inspires others to do the same. I've seen this in my relationships. The more authentic I became, the more honest and open the people around me were. It's as if my authenticity gave them permission to drop their own masks. That kind of connection is priceless. Living authentically isn't always easy. There will be moments when it feels uncomfortable, when you're tempted to conform to fit in. But every time you choose authenticity over approval, you strengthen your sense of self. And that sense of self is what makes you truly irresistible. It's not about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about being real, and that's something no one can take away from you. When you align your actions with your principles, you become a person of integrity, someone who doesn't just talk about values, but lives them. That alignment creates a confidence that can't be faked. It's not about arrogance. It's about knowing who you are and being at peace with it. And that peace radiates outward, drawing others in without you even trying. Living authentically is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. It frees you from the exhausting cycle of seeking approval and allows you to focus on what truly matters. When you embrace who you are, flaws and all, you create a life that feels genuine, fulfilling, and deeply connected. And that kind of life, it's magnetic. Living authentically isn't just about embracing who you are, it's about trusting in the power of being real. But trust doesn't only apply to how you see yourself. It's also about trusting the process, trusting time, and trusting that what's meant for you will find its way to you. That's where patience comes in. And let me tell you, patience isn't just waiting around doing nothing. It's a deliberate choice, a form of quiet strength that can completely shift the dynamic in your favor. I know how tempting it can be to rush toward a resolution when you feel ignored. The silence feels unbearable, and you might think that reaching out or forcing a response will ease the discomfort. I've been there thinking that if I just acted quickly, I could fix everything. But every time I rushed, I made the situation worse. What I've learned is that patience isn't passive. It's powerful. It creates space for things to unfold naturally, and in that space, true connections can grow. Practicing patience starts with letting go of the urge to control the outcome. Stoicism teaches us that we only have control over our own thoughts and actions, not over how someone else responds. This was a hard pill for me to swallow because I used to believe that if I tried harder or said the right thing, I could change how someone felt. But when I let go of that need to control, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. I realized that by stepping back, I was giving both myself and the other person room to breathe. Patience also allows you to shift your focus back to what matters most, your own growth. When you're constantly chasing someone's attention, it consumes your energy and leaves little room for anything else. But when you practice patience, you reclaim that energy. You can use it to invest in yourself, whether that means exploring a new passion, spending time with people who uplift you, or simply taking care of your mental and physical well-being. I've found that the more I focused on myself during those moments of waiting, the less I felt consumed by the need for their response. Another thing I've learned is that patience creates intrigue. When you're not constantly reaching out or trying to force a connection, it makes people wonder what's going on in your world. They start to notice your absence, and in many cases, they become curious about you again. It's not about playing games, it's about showing that your life doesn't revolve around them. That kind of quiet confidence is attractive because it signals self-respect. Patience also teaches you to value quality over immediacy. When I used to rush into resolving conflicts or chasing responses, I often ended up with surface-level interactions that didn't truly address the deeper issues. But when I allowed things to unfold in their own time, the connections that developed were more genuine and meaningful. It's like giving a plant the space and time it needs to grow. You can't rush the process, but the results are worth the wait. One of the hardest parts of practicing patience is learning to sit with discomfort. Let's be real. It's not easy to resist the urge to act when you feel ignored or undervalued. But I've found that sitting with those feelings instead of reacting impulsively builds emotional resilience. It's a reminder that you're strong enough to handle the discomfort without letting it dictate your actions. Over time, this strengthens your ability to navigate not just relationships, but life as a whole. Patience also helps you see the bigger picture. When you step back and give things time, you start to notice patterns and dynamics that you might have missed in the heat of the moment. I've experienced this firsthand. When I gave someone space instead of rushing to fix things, I gained clarity about what was really happening. Sometimes I realized their silence had nothing to do with me and everything to do with their own struggles. Other times, I saw that the connection wasn't as strong as I thought, and I was able to let go without regret. One of the most surprising benefits of patience is the way it builds mutual respect. When you don't push or force, it shows the other person that you respect their autonomy. It gives them the freedom to come to you on their own terms, which often leads to deeper and more authentic connections. I've seen this happen time and time again. By giving people space, I've allowed them the opportunity to reflect, and when they came back, the connection was stronger because it wasn't forced. Patience also allows you to set the tone for how you want to be treated. When you're constantly rushing to respond or fix things, it can signal to others that you're willing to overextend yourself. But when you step back and wait, it shows that you value your own time and energy. This doesn't mean you're cold or indifferent. It means you're balanced and intentional, and that balance sets the foundation for healthier interactions. Practicing patience has also taught me the importance of trust, not just in the process, but in myself. When you're patient, you're essentially saying, I trust that I'm enough and that I don't need to force anything to prove my worth. That kind of trust is incredibly empowering because it shifts the focus from external validation to internal strength. Patience creates space for self-reflection. When you're not consumed by the urge to act, you have the time to ask yourself important questions. What do I really want from this connection? Is this person truly aligned with my values and goals? Am I seeking their attention because I value them, or because I'm avoiding my own insecurities? These questions aren't always easy to answer, but they're essential for personal growth. Patience isn't about waiting passively, it's about waiting with purpose. It's about using that time to grow, reflect, and strengthen your sense of self. It's about trusting that what's meant for you will come, not because you chased it, but because you created the space for it to arrive. That kind of patience isn't just a virtue, it's a superpower. Attracting someone who ignores you isn't about tricks, games, or bending yourself out of shape to win their attention. It's about stepping into your own power, mastering your emotions, and living authentically. Through emotional independence, silent confidence, reframing their actions, living true to yourself, and practicing strategic patience, you shift the focus back to where it belongs, on you. When you stop chasing and start leading with your own values and strength, you become magnetic. People are drawn to self-respect, quiet composure, and genuine authenticity. But here's the most important takeaway. Even if their attention never comes back around, you've already won. Why? Because you've built a version of yourself that doesn't depend on someone else to feel whole. That's a win that no one can take from you. I want to hear from you. What resonated with you the most? Have you tried any of these approaches, or are you planning to start? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to connect and hear your story. If this conversation spoke to you and you're ready to dive deeper into topics like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Together, we're building a space where growth, self-mastery, and meaningful connections thrive. Let's keep the conversation going. See you next time.